Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley. Welcome back to Big 12 Insiders. We are starting a new series and try to run this thing basically until the season starts. I'm sure there'll be other topics that come up as well. But a new series. Which Big 12 game is the biggest of each week, starting with week 0? So we're going to break down what is the best game for each week within the conference. And I think it's an important thing to talk about because there's going to be a few games that are going to have probably some national ramifications, even if it's not against teams, outside of, and maybe against some teams that you might not think would be that big of a deal. There's going to be some that are, but yeah, I think it's a fun thing to talk about and to really look forward to the season. Been some stuff going on back and forth within schools. I love the banter. I love the fight. It's kind of still a dead period. Media days are coming up next week. So let's talk a little football when we have the opportunity. But before we do any of that, remember, like, follow, subscribe, continue to get in the comments section. Tell me what you do and don't agree with. And this will be fun to talk about what you don't agree with, especially as we start getting into the meat of the season when we do these things. And again, keep in mind, these games that we're talking about, all of this could literally change. By week 5, depending on how the season is going for each team, it could be totally different. I could think one thing this week, and then, I'm going to have show, during the week where we're talking about the best games. It might be a totally different game because who we think is not very good could be outstanding, and who we think is outstanding could absolutely stink. We saw that last year. That's the fun of the Big 12. That's why I think this exercise is a good thing, and to get us going back and forth and having all that interaction, man. So let's get into it. So obviously, the first episode here, week 0. There's a couple of teams that play, but within the Big 12, Kansas plays. But look, let's just be honest. They're playing, I believe it's Fresno State is who Kansas plays. While important, not the biggest game of the weekend. Literally the biggest game of the entire college football weekend. The marquee game is Iowa State versus Kansas State in Dublin, Ireland. Now, it's big for a number of reasons. Number one, it's basically the best football game on. It's going to be the only game on. There might be a couple of other games that are on at that time. Now that I sit here and look at the time. Nope, there isn't. It's 11 a.m. Central. It's literally the only football game on. So if you want to watch football, you will have to be watching Iowa State versus Kansas State. So marquee matchup of the entire weekend, the biggest game in college football, the first college football game, which I think is outstanding for both teams. I know Kansas State fans are a little upset because they are giving up a home game, but the national exposure, look, I understand businesses and all that kind of stuff. I get all of that. But the national exposure for the program, the stakes can't get any higher for a regular season football game, ladies and gentlemen. It's a big deal. Iowa State, how are they going to respond? They lost 2 NFL receivers that a lot of people think carried their quarterback. We're going to see if the quarterback had a lot to do with that or not this year because he's breaking in new receivers, and that can be tough. Kansas State, on the other hand, are losing their secondary. They lost 2 guys to the NFL that got drafted. So it's Iowa State breaking in new receivers, Kansas State breaking in new secondary guys. Kansas State is favored early in this game by 3. I think it's going to be an outstanding football game, to be honest with you. I think, and it needs to be. Let me just start there, where it needs to be a great football game, because a lot of people believe that both these teams have an opportunity to win the Big 12 conference. It's an early game. Losing this game puts you behind the 8 ball. Does it crush your season? No, absolutely doesn't do that. But it does put you behind. Having a conference game this early and you losing, it puts you behind and you're playing catch up for a while. You might even be playing catch up all season long, which that can be troubling. But I love that that these two teams are playing, number one, this early, meaningful football. So many times, us as fans, you can't really get that excited. You're excited because football is back, but you can't get that excited because, maybe the first couple of weeks you're playing some teams that, by halftime or early in the third quarter, you got your third and your fourth string in. And so it's not super exciting. It's the exact opposite of pro football, which pro football, I guess technically they have, the exhibition games where you don't have that in college. So you use a couple of these non-conference games to try to do that. It's still fun. It's still football, but not the best football. Neither one of these teams are taking that approach this year, and I absolutely love it. Now let's go to the national ramifications of this thing. Big 12, big stage. You get the opportunity to showcase who you are as number one, as a team, but more importantly, as a conference. I think the game needs to be a good football game. It can't be a 13-6 clunker where both offenses stink. Even if both defenses are really good, if the offense stinks, I think people can tell the difference, especially early. They'll be able to tell the difference where our offense just isn't any good or whether a defense is just outstanding. And there is a clear difference between the two. So it needs to be a really, really good football game, back and forth. I'm not saying it has to be 45-44 or anything like that where the defenses stink. It just needs to be good football, momentum swings, things of that, and lead changes. It just needs to be a good football game and showcase, hey, guys, look, I know you don't think the Big 12 is very good, but here's two football teams that are actually pretty good, pretty well coached, and we can go out there and compete with anybody in the country. That's the goal with all of this, and it needs to be the goal. The goal needs to be that Kansas State and Iowa State puts its best foot forward and lets everybody know and puts everybody on notice. Hey, even the loser, while they might be playing catch up, if they do happen to catch up, one of these teams or maybe both of these teams need to be somebody that you consider for the college football playoff. Or better yet, they play in a conference to where we watched these two teams early on. They were pretty good. And if they don't happen to win the conference and somebody else does, and somebody else finishes ahead of them, you know what? Maybe the Big 12 isn't so bad after all. Maybe the Big 12 actually has some good football teams in it, and we need to put multiple teams from that conference in the college football playoff. Maybe we need to take a step back from our biased alliance and just say, you know what? Yeah, we watched Kansas State and Iowa State early in the season. Those were pretty good, two good football teams. You know what? They didn't win the conference. So clearly there's some other teams in that conference that are pretty damn good. Now, I know I'm throwing out there that neither one of these teams win the conference. I'm sure Iowa State and Kansas State fans are like, what the hell are you talking about, Big B? It's just a hypothetical. Keep your shirt on. I'm not saying that neither one of those things are happening. I'm just throwing out hypotheticals for the conference's benefit. That's all that I'm saying. I'm not saying neither one of these teams are going to win. Just throwing it out there. I think it needs to be a good game, a competitive game. And look, I know it's early in the season, and this is probably asking a lot. You need to put your best foot forward. There's going to be mistakes. Look, there's mistakes in football games, and definitely early in the season. That's why a lot of teams don't play top caliber competition the first game of the year, first couple games of the year. We get all of that. But this, if you make a mistake, the other team's good enough to exploit it, or they should be good enough to exploit it. That's why I think this one is such a key game for both teams to get off on a positive foot. Because if you can go out, because there's going to be a ton of mistakes made. If you can go out there, make a ton of mistakes, and still win, and then to be able to correct those moving forward, then you got something. Losing doesn't crush your season, though. I want to make sure that we're clear. Yeah, it puts you behind the 8 ball. Yes, I get it. You got to play catch up. But it doesn't crush your season. It doesn't crush your season versus if you lose to a FCS school, or a low group of 5 school, in a non-conference game. That can crush your season because it can crush spirits and fan support and a lot of things. This won't do that. So I think this is clearly, obviously, it's the best game in the country, best game in the Big 12. And I'm looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it. So appreciate you guys, man. Again, this is just week 0. We will be back. We'll be doing this. Like I said, we're going to cover all the regular season games on what we think, or what I think, not we, what I think is the best Big 12 game. Remember to get in that comment section. Tell me what you like, dislike, all that good stuff. I appreciate you guys, man. And we will be back soon. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.